central figure of the Deschutes County Fair, has played a significant role in shaping and enhancing the event's success. His dedication and leadership have been pivotal in establishing the fair as a premier destination for a wide range of audiences. With his guidance, the fairgrounds have evolved in a dynamic and versatile venue that hosts a multitude of events throughout the year. In recognition of Geoff Hinds' invaluable contributions, it's clear that his passion and expertise have helped the Deschutes County Fair, as well as the fairgrounds in general, to thrive and become an integral part of the Pacific Northwest cultural and entertainment landscape. You ready for that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's give him a hand, guys.
I don't know who wrote that, and I don't know if any of that's true, but it was very nice.
Lincoln doesn't
Well, thank you for inviting me to speak to you guys today. I'm really excited to join you and share a little bit about what we get to do. We have the honor and privilege to do at Deschutes County Fair and Expo, basically just across the street here. I'll tell you a little bit today about the property itself and spend a lot more time on what we do on a year-round basis than what we just did last week, only because we are just getting the final numbers from last week's fair and Rodeo kind of in, but I can give you some of the success stories at the end of what the 2023 Fair and Rodeo looked like, our 103rd annual. So I'll start off real quick by giving you a quick update on the facility itself, right? Many of you probably have been here longer than I have and know more about the facility than I do, but I do like to share some of the facts and figures about Deschutes County Fair and Expo. This is one of the largest facilities of its type in the United States and indeed the world. Total facility size is about 320 total acres. About 120 of that is currently developed, and there's about 200 acres that are either semi-developed or or planned for development at some point in the future. But it makes it one of the largest facilities of its type, not only here in the Northwest, but across the United States and, like I said, in the world. On that, it's also one of the few master planned facilities and one of the newest facilities of its type. This is, I like to say, it's basically one of one. There's not a lot of facilities like what we have here in Central Oregon, anywhere in the United States. Something that was master planned, that was purpose built, that was built at one point and all open at one time for us 24 years ago. That just doesn't exist in the fair world. For those that have been around and maybe gone over to Crook or Jefferson County, or I heard you say you grew up around Sonoma County, that's much more what fairs across the United States look like, right? They're older, they're aged, they have a lot of history and tradition, which makes them special in their own regard, but it makes them really hard to utilize for modern business and what we do today, and they really struggle. So this facility here, where it's modern, it's master planned, it may not have that history and tradition like some of those older facilities, but it has something new, and that's that we're able to do a lot of unique things at that facility that other venues maybe necessarily can't. Based on our size, that planning, that design and everything, it gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility to do events like the fair, but also on a year-round basis, and we'll talk about what that looks like here in a minute. On that facility, we have a 300,000 square feet of indoor space, the largest of which is the First Interstate Bank Center, the arena. It's the largest facility of its type on this side of the Cascade Range. It seats about 4,000 fixed in seats, but it's also scalable up to over 14,000 if we do standing room on the floor. And to give you scale, right, that's almost 2 times what they can hold at Hayden Homes Amphitheater. So that can hold about 7,500 to 8,000. We can hold about 14,000 inside that single building on the property, and that's just one of our spaces. We also have a small multi-purpose conference center, the Middle, South, and North Sister complex. It's not all contiguous, but it's used for a lot of things. Carl spent a lot of time there in South Sister in the open class this last couple weeks and for a long time before that. But the rest of the year we use each of those 3 buildings in a lot of different ways, for trade shows, for weddings, for conventions, for speaker series, for banquets, that sort of stuff, across those 3 buildings, as well as conventions and business of that type on that small convention center. And then we have the livestock and equestrian complex across the backside of the fairgrounds. It's sort of unrivaled. Has room for about 400 unique horse stalls, scalable up to about 2,000 stalls for small animals, and shows of multiple different size. So we have 3 arenas, 2 covered. One's the indoor with First Interstate Bank Center, the outdoor Sagebrush Arena, and then Wilco Juniper Arena on the outside, which is the outdoor rodeo arena. So kind of this multi-purpose livestock equestrian complex that gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility out there as well. And because of that, we're home to a lot of unique events. Not only the annual fair and rodeo, which just occurred, but also events like Cascade Futurity, which is a world-recognized futurity cutting horse event, that's coming up in September. Farewell Festival, which happened in July. Some of you may have experienced some of that event. Mount Bachelor Kennel Club is a large event, large dog show here. USA BMX Northwest Nationals, that's the largest single BMX race and an Olympic qualifier that's held every year by USA BMX, and it's held here in our backyard. Cascade Equinox is coming up in September. It's another smaller music festival. Don't worry, we won't have the traffic issues we had a few weeks ago. High Desert Stampede, the fastest growing.
Speaking of the traffic thing, you guys need to make a PSA to everybody that lives in Bend that if they drive down to Veterans Way into 97, that they could get home in 5 minutes instead of 2 hours. And the complaining I hear from those people is mind-numbing because it was completely open going the other way.
Yeah, there were some unique challenges with traffic for that event, and we for that event specifically, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There were some unanticipated actions that really clogged up what was already a difficult traffic plan, and that's largely because people parked on both sides of the street on 19th, and they parked both directions on Elkhorn Way, and they actually parked and blocked the exit artery on 19th Street and created gridlock, and so there were no vehicles allowed to move on any of those back parking lots, and we actually had to open a secondary exit artery to just be able to get people out, to be able to get that traffic to move, and they did that day in and day out, and despite putting signs and all kinds of stuff. So we had some challenges, and this kept creating some unique challenges. They also, we didn't anticipate the pedestrians. We just don't see that, right? There's really not a lot of places to walk to from our fairgrounds, so we don't see it on a regular basis. So they had about 15 minutes of just complete stoppage on traffic because of everybody crossing Airport Way trying to figure out where they were supposed to go. And those two items really kind of created havoc to our plan. And by that point, we were kind of in the middle of it, and there was only so much we could do to adjust at that point. So it wasn't perfect, but I think we learned a lot and have made some adjustments from that moving forward. But yes, also if everybody, which is part.
If you guys said that to him, just like somebody up on the stage said, "Hey, when you're leaving tonight, if you're going to Bend, I'm just saying, be a little flexible on your." Right. Because there was nobody going that way, and you guys had people sitting there forever. And there's two ways they could have gone out on Veterans, and then they could have gone out on Lake and over, and it would have taken care of everything.
Yeah. So definitely some egress strategies that we have to put in place in order to move people forward in the future. But an event of that size, and things like the fair, right? No matter what we do, we're restricted by some traffic lanes, right? We're built on a circle, the plan, but it's also on Airport Way. So whether you go out one way or the other, left or right, you're limited to a single lane of traffic, and you can only move so fast. So if you can get them beyond that point, it certainly helps. So that's the goal. And we work kind of year-round on different traffic strategies with a lot of different players. We just didn't anticipate some of the actions that we saw on that event. So, High Desert Stampede, fastest growing rodeo in the PRCA, continues to grow each and every year and sold out, I believe, almost all of their performances this year, with the anticipation it will continue to do that and continue to add days and events and different surrounding activities around that event. So really exciting. 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember what, my days run together at this point, we brought the Columbia River Circuit Finals back. That's the PRCA finals for the Northwest. So there's 54 rodeos. Rodeo starts and ends here in Central Oregon for the pro rodeo circuit now, and really has kind of put us back on the map for that PRCA rodeo. If you're a pro rodeo cowboy, you can live in Central Oregon and you can compete in 5 or 6 different events and sleep in your own bed. There's not many places you can do that in the United States, so it makes it a big cowboy capital for a lot of people and create some opportunities there. Central Oregon Sportsman Show, list goes on and on. And if I was going to put the list up there, it'd be over close to 400 unique events in a normal year that we'd have on that list. So we do about 400 unique events. About 280 unique events and 400 event days. And there's more days than there are days in the year because multiple events take more than one day. Think the fair, where it's 5 days. We have multiple events that are 2, 3, 4, 5 days. And so they add up to over 400 unique events in a year. It's not uncommon for the facility to have multiple events at any one time. I think the most we've ever had on a single day is 11 unique activities going on that property at any one time, which is definitely a lot. This gives you a quick ranking overview of the property. It's the 272nd most popular facility in the United States as of the end of the year last year. Number 3 in Oregon, so it's behind Moda Center and the zoo. but it's better than everything else. But the zoo has cool animals, so that's all right. And the number one attraction within 50 air miles as far as visitation, which is kind of exciting and right here in our backyard. So what does that translate to? This is something we started working on last year, is putting together kind of what we do, what does it mean necessarily to the community, and what does it look like. So 236 unique events last year on the property, brought 700,000 unique visitors to the property. So almost 1 million visitors. We'll far eclipse that this year. I'll show you a slide here in just a second how we can know that. 635 number of event days. So 635 days of events going on throughout the year. But we add all that up and we get about $80 million in total economic impact created from the activities that we do at Deschutes County Fair and Expo. We also use a pretty conservative economic impact multiplier. We use a number that's less than half of what Travel Oregon uses, and so that number may be slightly off as well. And we did that because we just thought the number was too big when we ran it with the number that they use. And they use a number that's based on visitors coming from more than 50 air miles, and their number, we also recognize a lot of the visitors to our property come from right here in Redmond and Bend and some of their surrounding communities. Although we do have a tremendous amount of visitation from outside the area as well. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Breaking it down a little bit, this is what it looks like this year so far to date. So this was through July 31st. It doesn't include the last 5 days, just because I didn't have time to pull those numbers yet. But about 585,000 unique visitors so far this year. It means we'll probably surpass 1 million visitors this year, which will put us far in the lead. I think we'll beat the zoo if we do that. I don't know about Moda Center, but we'll be pretty close. It will be very close to being the number one visited attraction in Oregon at that point with over 1 million visitors. 59% of those people now are coming from outside 50 air miles. And that's a change, right? So last year that number was close to 40%. As of this year, it's about 59%. I think that's largely because of some of the events that we've brought in. Think Farewell Festival and Overland Expo. People are coming from all over the world to visit this facility, this community, and see what it is that we have here, not only on their property, but what's surrounding us as well. And so that really is tremendous. It drives a lot of economic impact. So you can see our economic impact number for this year is 66 million this year. We're almost to last year's number, both in total attendance to date, as well as the total economic impact. So we think that'll just continue to grow. Should end up closer to 90 to $100 million in local economic impact from what we do on that property. The other one I like is down here. There's more than almost 50% of the visitors come from more than 100 air miles. That gets them virtually outside of Oregon unless they're coming from one of the places like on the coast. Pushes them outside Portland Metro up into Vancouver and other places. So they're coming to other states and visiting us here. Our key locations obviously are Washington, Seattle, San Francisco, Boise, LA, and pretty much anywhere that comes through the airport. That's a huge benefit to us, is having that airport right next to us. We see huge influx from anywhere that airport can fly. But also outside of that, there's some unique pockets that we see that don't have air flight, like Boise. And so people are able to drive, and anything within that driving range stranded here. Both of these numbers, the 50 plus and the 100 plus air mile range, have really shifted this year because of the types of events and the number of events that we brought in. So it's really interesting to watch this data.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
How do you get that data? How do you measure 59% of 50 miles, 50% over 100 miles? How do you...
You don't want to know.
It's these things, right?
It's
Yeah,
all
cell
of
phones,
it.
right?
Yeah, it's 100% cell phone data, so if you visit the property, it collects your data. It's all anonymized. I don't know how to say that word correctly. It's all anonymized data that we get, but it pools it and tells us where our visitors are coming from. We have a tremendous amount of data that we can look at. We can look at socioeconomic, your earning income, where they come from, where they live, what visitor zip codes, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we have access to a tremendous amount of data nowadays that wasn't available 3, 4, 5 years ago.
So Big Brother's watching.
Somebody's watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's all anonymous, so we don't know we don't know everything about you, just everything about you. July. So I'll go back 1 month. So this is what a single month looks like. July is a little bit of an outlier. You I'm here in August, so we always go back 1 month. You got a unique month just because of July being last month with this piece that we had with Farewell Festival, which was the largest non-fair time event we've ever held on the property. And you kind of see, we had it, if I had run this slide, I had May before this one, was the last time I gave this presentation. This number here, the total number of unique events in May was actually 27. And so that's probably the fewest number of unique events we'll do in any month, except maybe December. But the most number of individual visitors we'll get outside of August because of fair. And also a few number of events, only 29 event days. Usually those numbers are really skewed. But just because of the sheer size of some of the events in July, those numbers are really skewed. Largely because of Farewell Festival, but also we have Overland Expo and Gateway 500 in that month that really give us huge visitation numbers. And really people coming from outside the area. This has really skewed that out of the area visitation as well. We went from about 40 to 45%, 50 air miles and 100 air miles to the numbers we're seeing today, largely because of those events and what we did in July. And it skewed it very quickly. That month alone, about $24 million in economic impact using the multiplier that we use, and then bumped us back up to that $66 million economic impact number. And you can see why people come to visit us when you do something like that. Just those shots and those photos. It's about as photogenic and amazing place as you can come to visit. And those of us that live here, we already knew that. So that opportunity.
Those same folks that did the Farewell Fest, are they planning on doing the same thing again next year, or?
We would certainly hope so.
I'd imagine, because you guys had 65,000 visitors?
Yeah, ballpark.
And they expected 20 to 40?
So they were expecting 20 to 40. It was capped at 35,000 visitors per day, paid attendance. So they're close to sold out for each and every day with that number. So the 65, there's also 3-day and 1-day passes kind of in there, so it changes the metrics. But they were very happy, and certainly we're hopeful that we'll see that return next year. So, and I think so do all the people who
I would
hotels,
think
restaurants.
It did well enough, and the word would get out that there'll be others approaching you guys too, because I think.
Yeah, so that festival is produced by a group called C3 Presents, which is a national company based out of Austin. They produce Lollapalooza. That's where they were last weekend. They produce Bonnaroo. They produce Austin City Limits. They produce about 50 unique events in a number of different states, as well as across the world. Lollapalooza is produced, I think, in 6 different countries. They know what they're doing, and we were really excited to have them come here to Central Oregon. And they identified this as a market that they really want to be in, and they had great success. So we anticipate that'll be back. But you're correct, right? Working with a market leader opens the doors, and it really puts us on the map, and so it makes my job and our team's job easier in selling the property to other events. Because it's proven itself that it can do this, that it can be successful. So we can host 35,000 people successfully, and we can get them in and usually get them home. Usually. They get home eventually.
Geoff, does Central Oregon, for lodging and other, do we have the infrastructure to support the numbers of people that are coming to the fairgrounds?
So that event sold out every hotel, Airbnb, every lodging property within the market. It's something of that size needs some additional support, right? We would benefit from having an additional 10,000 hotel rooms in Redmond for that event, but not the rest of the year. Certainly, there is not an abundance of transient lodging in the market, meaning hotel rooms, where Airbnbs in Redmond and/or Bend for something like that. On an annual basis or a traditional, what we normally do, and I'll show some of that here in a minute, like Overland Expo and stuff, yeah, we're reaching capacity on a pretty regular basis. For something like this, we far exceed it, but it's one time a year. In the future, it'll probably be more. So we do need more inventory, but as more and more people come to visit the market for traditional reasons, going into the mountains, going onto the rivers, that sort of stuff, fishing, all those things, we will continue to need more and more hotels in the marketplace. We are short for what we do. They backfill with things like camping, on-site camping, off-site camping, those sorts of things, and long-term that's probably the stopgap, is putting people in temporary lodging opportunities rather than hotels and stuff. Not to take away from driving the traffic to those locations, but they just can't absorb all of it at any one time. That leads actually very well into a slide that talks about where people come and go from. So back to your question, how do we have the data? Well, we know where they start, where they go from. So there's where they come from. They start at their house primarily, or dining, hotels and casinos, work, or somewhere else. And they come to our facility, and then this is where they go afterwards. Some go home. You can see the impact is largely they go out to dine and to have fun after they're at events. So continuing that economic spending. So people come, they eat dinner, and then they come to the event, and then they go home, or they come to the event, they eat dinner, and they go home. And it drives that economic impact into the marketplace, and especially here in Redmond, right? And really helps drive the economy here in a lot of different ways for different events. So really, we think it's an important piece to talk about where people are coming from, where they're going to go, and we can learn and make sure that we're working with our retail partners and our lodging partners and those people who do business here in Redmond and in Central Oregon to make sure we're aligning with their needs, but their needs also are aligning with our customers.
Speaking of the parking issue, did you guys figure out something that might help with like putting barriers out or something? Because it seems like that's a trend that needs probably some reinforcement in one way or another to stop it.
Yeah, barbed wire doesn't work.
Constantine wire does.
Yeah. Because we have people park in the BLM land in places that are fenced off. So we're still working to see what it is. For a lot of these events, right, we're bringing people who've never been to the marketplace and they don't know what to go, and they follow the leader. They just, if a car pulls in and goes into BLM, the next one goes and the next one goes, and pretty soon you have 500 cars parked in somewhere that they shouldn't have started to park because somebody thought it was a good idea and found a pathway. So certainly we need to work on some opportunities. We use a lot of natural barriers, a lot of rock barrier and that sort of stuff. Which works, except when you have Central Oregonians with big trucks, they know how to move those. So, we're kind of damned if we do, damned if we don't. And so we're still working on what the perfect solution is on that.
Have you thought about having outlying natural areas where people can park and having trams, these little mini buses?
Yeah, so we've looked at some shuttling operations. It's difficult to find a shuttling operation that makes sense because there are no large parking locations within Central Oregon, right? We have the largest single parking lot. There is no other mass parking location. We have a lot of smaller parking lots that makes it really inefficient to go point to point. And so we've got to come up with some sort of a parking destination that's a large point where you can move have a single drop-off point to get people from. We've identified tentatively some possible locations, and we're working on the opportunity to utilize those. Those would benefit us during fair and other events. During fair, for a while, we were parking people at high schools in Bend, in Sisters, and indeed here in Redmond. But those parking lots they're not designed for the size and the amount of traffic that we're getting for these events, and they have benefit, but the benefit quickly becomes limited in what they do. It's also really expensive to move people around because of the cost of fuel and insurance and stuff. That's why it has to be efficient. It costs, for fair, we were getting to the point where it's costing more than $5 per person per direction to move a customer from a parking lot that was outside of, off of our property, just because of the cost of busing fuel and that sort of stuff. So it's got to be efficient in order to make it work.
At the fair, you've moved the concerts outside and the rodeo inside. Why did you do that, and how's it working?
Yeah. So we did that during COVID with the concerts primarily, and we moved the concerts out of the First Interstate Bank Center in 2021 during COVID because it takes us about a year to plan a fair, and it takes us about 9 months to plan the concert series portion of that itself. And when we started planning 2021 fair in 2020, we were right in the middle of COVID. And the thought process that we would try to even plan something inside that building was just, it wasn't even a starter. But we also know the popularity of those events during fair. So we made the decision to move them outside for 2021 and move something else inside. As far as the concert venue, we saw great success, right? The majority, and obviously there are detractors and people who didn't like it, the majority of our attendees liked the outdoor concerts. What we put on the indoor space that year was our beef barn because we had blocked access to it. They were not a fan of being in that building, and so we changed it around. And so we went back and looked at what other opportunities existed, thinking that our attendee, the majority of the attendee that we surveyed liked the outdoor concerts, but we needed something in that space. And we know we can do rodeo indoors. We do it 2 other times a year with High Desert Stampede and Columbia River Circuit Finals. And looking at that building, well, it's multi-purpose. it's about the most rodeo-specific building on the West Coast. If you look at the design of it, you look at it, and it's got this weird thing, right? This weird cutout on this side, I guess the side we're sitting on, and that was because it was designed for rodeo performances in that regard, and it really made sense to move the fair rodeo back in there. There's 2 rodeo arenas on our property, and nobody's really ever been able to explain why we have an outdoor and an indoor rodeo facility that are both phenomenal. And so it can go either place and be an excellent event in either location, but it seemed to make sense based on the way we have moved stuff around the fair to do that. We continue to play with the concerts, right? It has impact, right? Obviously, you're in that building the first year, and you knew that we kind of messed up on some things the very first year, and we continue to tweak it and make it better. It was really, really loud across the fairgrounds. We didn't aim the speakers the right way, and we didn't aim the stage the right way on year 1. And so downtown Redmond got a great concert as well in year 1. Sorry, we moved it and fixed it, largely so Carl's building wouldn't be quite as loud. But we keep tweaking it and moving it forward. And some of the things we did this year, we couldn't have done in 2021 because we had an outdoor rodeo, and so we couldn't push sound into that rodeo from a concert. So we had to try to please all of our masters all at one time, which is what we're doing, right? During fair, we've got 500 different things going on all at once. We've got livestock shows, you kind of talked about that, and multiple different shows. You've got the open class exhibits, you've got carnival, you've got you have all these things, and we've got a lot of things that we're trying to mix. And we're not the best at any of them, but we try to be good at all of them. And so we're trying to find that happy medium that pleases as many people as possible. So, it's never a perfect science. So once we have the perfect fair, I'll retire. Probably running up towards the end. Actually, I'm at the end, so snapshots, I'll leave this on the screen. This is just a quick snapshot of Overland Expo, one of our largest events that we brought in last year, and it brings visitors from all over the world. We have a couple more of these, but I'll stop with this one, and it sounds like we're out of time. So.
Geoff, do you have a few minutes maybe afterwards in case people have additional questions?
Yeah, and I'll stay for any.
Just a comment about the 2 different rodeo venues. I think it might be time of year, and it might be that the outside rodeo was a precursor to the new bigger rodeo grounds, because it was junior rodeo, local rodeos, lots of kids who are involved before outdoors.
That makes sense.
Geoff, first of all, thank you so much for coming. And this is such a big topic that we'd love to have you back. There's so much information that we didn't even get to hear that I think we'd love to have you back. Second of all, your office is just right over here. If you ever need to come and join a Kiwanis meeting, we'd love to have you. And then this is for you. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll take a little picture.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I gotta ding the bell. I'll get it. I'm learning. Okay, thanks everyone for a great day.